In my book that I just published, I talk a lot about the wondrous wanderers, or you might call them normies or NPCs, and how these people will try to take their poisonous ideologies and force them upon you because they have a sense of moral superiority when it comes to moving through the world if the government says so, if daddy government says so, or just any kind of authority figure. Oh, well, whoever the boss is, well, the boss said that we can do this and that we're better for it, so, well, that's what we're going to do. Well, you got to be able to question that sometimes, especially when it comes to the government. And one thing that we learned from the COVID lockdowns in 2020, which was over 5 years ago now, and people are still wearing masks, by the way. To me, that's insane and delusional and psychotic, borderline anyway. But, I remember what it was like going to, and I was in a conservative state. I'm here in Utah in the United States, and even in Utah, people got like high off of having the sense of moral superiority, telling people to wear their mask, or staying 6 feet away from one another. I think it's important to understand and recognize what exactly was that, because it seems like it was all just a fairy tale dream for a lot of people. I'm surprised many people are not talking about the COVID lockdowns even more so, because it's a time period that many people just kind of want to let go of. But one of the reasons that I bring it up is because I talk about in my author's note here to the beginning of the book, the visions that I had that I go through in this book and have a psychological and philosophical interpretation of them following each chapter, which each chapter, there's 38 chapters that have a vision. And I had all these visions at the height of the COVID lockdowns. And so it's a very pertinent moment for me to establish and to relate to not only myself, but I think also the people around me. And I think that going forward, we have to remind ourselves what kind of danger lurks in the shadows of the hearts of those that have not yet fully realized or individualized themselves. And they're not on the path of individuation. They're not on the path of truly expressing your soul, or their soul rather. These people are dangerous, and it's only because what we see is when people don't have themselves, they succumb to ideas much more easily, and they believe what they see much more easily. I remember seeing in Italy, I think it was Italy and France, people were in the hospital, and it looked like old people were just like, the videos were insane. I mean, they were on those respirators or whatever they were called, right? They were on those things, and it just looked like they were dying. You had the people that were in those big, huge suits, fully covered head to toe, and I was just like, what the, like, this is for real? This is real? And at the time I was already working remote for the company that I was working with. And so it wasn't a big change to work remote. But I remember also when we were working remote, I would go on a walk through the neighborhood, and there were at the time I was living in a neighborhood where there were a lot of families, and I was living with my narcissistic roommate at the time, who I didn't know was a narcissist until after a few weeks of the lockdown. And I was like, oh, this guy's he's something completely different than I thought he was. And I think a lot of people maybe had similar experiences with the lockdowns, with the people in their own house. And the Bible says that your enemy is going to be in your own house, right? Well, so remember what happened. We saw playgrounds like wrapped in police tape. Okay, in my city, my state. I can't believe, like, I couldn't believe it. At one point, I even tried to go get some pizza from this local pizza shop. It was like the only pizza shop that you could actually go into. Otherwise you had to call in, but you had to wear a mask, and I refused to wear a mask because I just did not see like what was happening on TV to be what was happening in real life. I didn't know anyone that had died, or that knew anyone that died from the pandemic. I didn't know anyone that knew anyone up until a year and a half later. To me, when after a few months, and I was like, there's literally no one that I know that knows anybody. And at the time, you know, I was working with people across the United States in digital marketing as well. And so, you know, people were very afraid across the United States. People canceled their services. I took a pay cut, you know, to keep my job. They basically offered us, you know, look, we've had 40% of our clients being reduced in the last, you know, 2 months. Well, you can either take a pay cut, or, you know, we're gonna have to let you go. So, well, some form of income is better than no form of income, right? So I took the smaller income because I didn't know what I was going to be able to get as a job. And you know, I mean, I still was getting paid pretty good for what I was doing, but still, you know, I had to make those small sacrifices where everything was just changing. And, you know, we took so many sacrifices, and the wealth gap was just so much different, right? But what I believe is and it, you know, the wealth transfer, which is only increasing. And this is really the heart of why I want to talk about this video, what I want to talk about, and why I want to talk about this topic in this video is last night I was talking to someone that, let's just say, is in the know when it comes to the news. And the only reason that I know he's in the know is because he works with people that are in the know, and I'll leave it at that. So we were talking last night on X, and through the messaging and such, and DMs, and this is what I said. I said, look, you know, because he had made a post about, you know, the normies and such, basically, and what are we supposed to do now? Like, because everybody wants to change things at a mass scale countrywide. You know, people all think that they have the answers. And I said, well, that's why I'm not voting to legitimize this system. I don't believe this system has our interests anymore at heart. I don't know if it ever did, but I think there was a time at one place where it was, and that's why I'm not voting anymore. And I think the answer is to start a community, you know, build from the ground roots up. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, that's what we're doing now with the Regal Change Academy. And the people in the Regal Change Academy, they understand that, you know, crap can hit the fan any second, anytime. And I don't know exactly what everybody else is doing, but we're just living our lives at this point. You know, we're in the Regal Change Academy. We are just building ourselves. We're building our network. We're building up our community. We're building up each other, and we're striving to get as much influence as possible in our areas and our communities and such, so that when the time comes, because guess what? The economic collapse, I believe what's next is an economic collapse, even more drastic than COVID. Now, when will that be? I don't know exactly, but I think it would be within the next 5 years. And the reason for that is because of Agenda 2030, okay? And I think that there's going to be a spirit of the python that takes place. And this is something I talked to this guy about in the DMs as well. And he said that he'd never heard this take before, and it would be interesting to hear about this. So that's why I am making this video, is because I think that if more people understood exactly what kind of thing we're dealing with, because we're fighting against the principalities, not the flesh, right? We fight in the principalities in the spirit. So we, as godly people, need to recognize the dangers of what's potentially to come. Because look at what happened, like with people in 2020. Oh, I wanted to finish up this pizza story. So I went to the pizza shop and I had to wear a mask, and I refused to wear a mask. I was kicked out, and they got like, oh, you gotta leave. They were just like radiating this sense of self-righteousness. Like, oh, I'm doing the right thing because the daddy government says so. And that was like the energy that I got from these people. And I wouldn't wear a mask when I went to the store, the grocery store. And some people would even take off their masks when they saw me not wearing a mask. Because I knew that this was BS. I knew it was BS. And I was fine. And I didn't get COVID until December of 2020 for the first time. And yeah, it was one of the worst sicknesses I've ever had, but I lived, just like almost 99.9% of everybody else that got it. So yeah, it's not a fun sickness. And obviously you want to stay healthy and do what you can to minimize the potentials for getting sick, but like, for me, I would have rather just not rolled over like so many of these other people did. And look, if you did that, I'm not trying to shame you here, but if you are convicted in something later on now, because whatever's happening next is going to be economic. And why do I say that? Again, it's the python spirit from the Bible. The python spirit constricts, okay? At first, it allows you to grow a little bit, but then it constricts you and it suffocates you. And I think that that's exactly the kind of spirit whoever they are, the elites, whatever, because they're not all, I don't think all of the elites are bad, but I think a lot of them are definitely not good in their intentions with people. But I think also that there's just this sense of complete misunderstanding when it comes to what's happening next. Okay, this is not something to be afraid of. I'm not telling you that we should be afraid here. I'm just saying that this is what's next. And so you might as well just not conform. If you're convicted to not conform, don't conform. And yeah, it's going to suck for us for a little while as godly people. We're not going to take the mark of the beast. And I don't think that, the mark of the beast, I'm not saying that we're in the end of times, because I don't think we're necessarily in the end of times just yet, but I think it's entirely possible that we will see the end of times in our lifetime. But I think it's also possible that Jesus Christ could come tomorrow or today. Like in my view, Jesus Christ is already here. Like, he never left. The second coming of Christ you could see it as a metaphor for you coming to Christ and seeing him after you were the one that was lost. You're seeing him in your spirit. You could see it like that, but I also think that I do think that Jesus is going to come back. I don't think that he's left necessarily, though, either, because he's with us and we're the body of Christ. And I think that as long as we remember that, as godly people, we'll be able to recognize and live our life accordingly. I think we ought to live as if Jesus is coming at any point in time, but also that we look forward to the future, that we plan ahead. We live as if we're going to live just for today, but plan for life as if we're going to live forever. And that's kind of the way that I see my life anyway. And to me, that's what works. Like completing this book, having a business, having a community, a godly community. This is stuff that is very important, and I think it is the antidote to these sufferings and these unholy challenges that we have to face that are just part of the process and part of the walk with Christ. It's just part of what we do. And I think that the high that these people will have in the demoralization and dehumanization process, because they've already implemented this ideological subversion into the collective consciousness when it comes to these liberal ideas, right? And people want to believe that the conservatives, at least the conservatives, want to believe that they're good and all that. Meanwhile, these conservatives are some of the most judgmental people I've ever seen. They really are, which is why I don't consider myself conservative or liberal. I don't consider myself in any box. And anybody that tries to put me into a box, it's like, good luck, bro. Good luck, sis. I'm not going to be put into a box. But what I will say is, my goal is to help people develop godlike mindsets so that they don't fall ill to these despicable, things that are going on in society that are obviously just designed to make you respond in a place of fear. Because as Napoleon Bonaparte said, who was the conqueror emperor of France with the French Revolution and such, he said that people have two ways of operating in the world, basically. One is fear and one is self-interest. And it's better to act out of self-interest than fear, because at that point you're letting fear control you. You're not in control of who you are. Okay, you're in survival mode. You're not capable of being who you actually are when you're in survival mode. Okay, that's why it's so important to not be in survival mode, and it's important to be in that self-interest. It's not egocentrism. Okay, it's not about being egocentric. It's about having a healthy ego, protecting you and your soul, and not pouring into cups that leave you drained. Okay, and I think that with the COVID lockdowns and such, I don't know if they're gonna come again exactly like that, but the smart cities are a thing. Okay, that's something that's actually happening, being built. This is one of the reasons why I've been getting so much into Bitcoin recently, because I understand that okay, this is ideal as a currency ever, the most ideal currency ever. What makes us think that this is not ran by technocrats? Okay, that's something that somebody brought up in a comment in one of my videos recently, which I thought was a very, very good question. That something I thought about was the way that I phrased it myself was, what if they're using Bitcoin as a way to merge people into a digital system? Well, but they wouldn't be able to do that with Bitcoin necessarily, because of the types of, because of the way that the system is ran. It's completely anonymous, and it's just, it's encrypted. So are there ways to hack it? I mean, sure, but the likelihood is extremely, extremely, extremely low. Okay, and once money is transferred from one wallet to another wallet, you have to push money from one wallet to another. You can't just automatically do a monthly subscription with Bitcoin or something, for example, because the person that has the wallet has to physically push, digitally push, but physically press buttons to digitally push that money or that Bitcoin to another wallet. Okay, it doesn't happen like that with modern banks and all of that. It's not the way that the system works now. So ideally, yeah, Bitcoin is it's entirely, it will be the currency of the future. But how is that going to be exactly, and what that's going to look like? I don't know. I don't know. And it's the only currency that is absolutely finite in its scarcity and resources. There's only going to be 21 million of them. Okay, that in of itself is very, very important. And because the fiat currencies and such that people, this is what we saw in 2020. Oh, at least in the United States. Oh, everybody's going to get an extra $1,000 or whatever it was. And I just used it to, like, I used it to get my guitar and then pay off student loans. Like that. So I was like, well, I mean, I already paid for it anyway. But yeah, I got my guitar with that check, and then I paid off the student loans. Well, some of them, a payment or two. It wasn't much, but it was still more than what I had. But it's still, that was inflation, and ever since then, the inflation's gotten worse and worse and worse, and things are just the fiat currency's dead, and they can roll out the digital dollar at any time. The digital euro is coming. Okay, we have to be prepared for this kind of stuff, but also don't think about it too much. Be ready for it, but also live your life. Okay, I'm not trying to incite fear or anything like that. I'm just saying that you've got to make sure that you understand what's happening. I think it's good to know where you're at and what you want to be doing, and keep up with the times, but also don't let the times consume you. Okay, be an individual. Just because you're born in this time doesn't mean you have to be a product of it. Doesn't mean you have to be an NPC and act like one. All right. So with all that being said, get the book. Let me know what your thoughts are on the book. I've already had some great feedback on it, so I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts and insights from it that they got. And then also, if you want to join that community where we're building from the ground up, we are making it happen in the roots of society, join the Regal Change Academy. Okay, it's not just a place to go and to just kind of talk. We're actually doing things, we're actually accomplishing things, we're actually striving in there. Okay, and some people might be surprised about how real we are, but that's what people also like about it, is just how real we are in the community. So if you also want to schedule a one-on-one with me, I'm doing the Godlike Master Initiation program to help you get that godlike mindset, okay? And that's going to be more for people that have the finances and the time and the resources to actually implement themselves into that. Or if you just want to do like a regular one-on-one call, general one-on-one, that's what we do there. We just kind of talk about general things, and whatever it is, like whether it's a relationship or whether it's business or life in general, that's what we talk about there. All right. So with all that being said, peace be with you. Until next time.